What's happening, guys? I know it's been a while since my last video. Been doing some holiday traveling, but in between there, I went out to a mobile call out in the south side of Chicago for a 2003 Ford Escort, which was one of the last years, if not the last year for the Escort. 2.0 liter Zetec, and it had a check engine light on. So I went out there and diagnosed it, and I found it had a thermostat was sticking open and therefore not allowing the engine to fully warm up. It set a P0125 code, which is for insufficient coolant temp for closed loop fuel control. Also, while I was out there, I noticed the Serpentine belt was cracked and frayed beyond belief. So I went ahead and upsoled that. So we'll be changing that out in this video also. But it's really tight in there. It's really dark that freaking night, really dark. Not even no lights in the garage there. So I give you a general overview of how I approach it because it is so tight on the engine, but I couldn't show exactly how I routed the belt on there. What I will do is show that, and then I'll have a diagram I'll link to down below of the actual belt routing that's me the most useful on here. Back to the 125 code. Basically what the 125 code is, the PCM is constantly monitoring the coolant temperature based on the startup ambient air temperature and the coolant temp. And then it sets a timer, okay? And at a certain amount of time, depending on those parameters of the coolant and air temperature, it monitors how long it takes to reach full operating temperature, 196 or so or above, and if it actually attains that. And the reason being is that's an emissions thing for the government. It's a fuel economy thing to make sure your vehicle runs in closed loop, so it has that fine fuel control, but also reduces sludge within the engine because the system's fully heated up on there, and it reduces all the vapors that accumulate in the engine. In the crankcase, I'm talking water vapors that never get burned off because the engine never gets hot enough. So there's a good reason for it, and it's not just emissions. So we're gonna go ahead and change that out today. It's pretty simple, but I wanna show you my tips and tricks and the way I approach it, and a cool little refill tool that I'll show you how that one works finally on this vehicle also. So let's get to it. Okay, down here on the driver's side, there's a shield right here that covers the radiator drain cock. So we're gonna take out a bolt here and one over here so we can get out of the way and start draining the coolant out. Hopefully this one reaches. Wow, impressive. And there's a washer on that one. Apparently there's one right here also. There's another large washer. Let me get this thing out of the way. Get to the drain up there. Now this one up top here, you can see this one had a nut in the backside. It was broken already. Let's get this whole thing out of the way. Something like that. And you can see right up in here, right here is the drain. So we're going to start draining the coolant out. I just use a regular slip joint pliers like that. Get her loose. After that, you should be able to do it by hand. Get your bolts out of the way. And a nice little pile here. And we can get the drain pan over here. Here we go. Now the trick is, radiator's warm or it's cold like this. To relieve any pressure in the system, you just start unscrewing this slowly, and it will relieve the pressure this way instead of pulling off the radiator cap up top. Let's let this go ahead and drain for a little bit. Now once the initial pressure like this is relieved, we're going to go up top, pull the radiator cap off as long as the engine's cold and the radiator's cold. And you watch in a second here, you'll see it just flowing out of here. And there it goes. let that drain off for a while, and we'll go do the belt. Alright, let's jack it up. Now, normally I would take the wheel off of here, the tire, and do it that way. But believe it or not, I don't have the right size. They went to a 13/16 for the Escort ZX2 because it has so much raw power. So we're just going to jack it up so I can get underneath the car. And we can get to the belt and the shield then that way. Okay, so what I did is I jacked the vehicle up, turned the wheel all the way to the right, locked it, and I have access to this shield right here to get it out of the way and get to that belt nice and easy that way. Now it looks like these are all 8mm. Yeah. That one's 10. And it may be easier to take this whole shield off, okay, and only unscrew it where it screws into metal panels on the vehicle. When they screw it together like this with those J-nuts in there, it's just a big pile of rust, and they'll just sit there and vibrate. You'll never get anything loose. So let's see how it is down here. Now this is going into the metal, the core support, nice and rusted. But you can see it came right out. No vibrations, and it transfers all the power. So we're just going to do that. I tell you, these mobile calls, they're fun because they're always an adventure. Adapt and overcome. Marine Corps motto. Alright, now from the top here is the best way to get at that the tensioner. It's down in there. Okay, what you want to use is a 13mm and a Serpentine belt tool, and you're gonna go like this way, lock onto it, and then pull back towards the front of the car, and you'll be able to release it on there. Now, once the belt is released, once the belt has got the tension released from it, just slide it off any one of the pulleys, and then nice and loose like this, and you can go ahead and take it down here a little bit, and just start taking it off all the pulleys on here. Now that is one belt that I don't feel bad about upselling. It's fraying, and those cracks are bad. And here's the new belt. I only use Motorcraft belts or Goodyear Gator backs pretty much. I've used Dayco and Gates and stuff like that, but I always prefer the Motorcraft, obviously. They make a lot of improvements over the years. Now the hard part when you're going back in, just start getting it around all the pulleys. It's hard to get down in there. Get it around all the major pulleys, okay? And then when you get to the down to the bottom, that's where you're gonna slip it on. It's the easiest way to get it down in there. Or from the top, there's a smooth pulley right here, and here's the tensioner. You wanna slip it underneath the smooth pulley on there. Okay, you got our belt on. I actually accessed it from underneath to get the last part onto here. Either way is acceptable, and either way it's tight in here. So we're gonna throw a shield back on. Our coolant's done draining over there. So we're going to go after that next and just change the thermostat out. That'll be the easiest part of this whole job here. Okay, our belt's on, coolant's fully drained, so we're going to go after the thermostat right here next. Now it's got 3 T25 bolts on it, and once you get those off, this whole thing will come off together. And what I do on these older cars, I take off the neck and the hose together. I do not touch the hose clamp on there. So we're going to go ahead and start getting that off of there. Alright, I'm going to get the cam sensor out of the way, the connector for it, everything on here. Hear that? It's really old and brittle, you want to take off as little as possible. Everything's kind of set in its ways. So we're going to go ahead and take these off of here. Be very gentle. And it is a T25, so you got to make sure you have that on hand. T20 is very common for any kind of Torx bit on a Ford, but not on these. So we're going to get these ones on the side here, out in our pocket, safe, and then we'll go after this top one over here. This one's being a real pain. This is where it's nice to have a flex head when you're down here in this bottom one. The exhaust manifold's in the way. There we go. The flex head on the ratchet provides that long swing. I tell you, I should have brought the 1/4 inch from Milwaukee right-angled ratchet for this one. It's been really nice right about now. It would have fit down in here too. I just need to get it loose enough. So I can do it by hand. Now this bottom one's going to have this bracket coming off of it too. I think that's some kind of heat shield, to tell you the truth. You see that bracket right there? Take that off, get it to the side, and then this one right here will be our last one. Things are kind of tricky to get in there, but it is a T25 though. These are such light torque. If you had a T20, you might be able to get them out. This stuff's in the way again. Oh yeah, that's big time. Okay. And then you just grab it and wiggle a little bit. There's going to be some leakage. And you can see a thermostat in there. Now, this is all plastic, so you don't have to worry about corrosion, but if there isn't any corrosion built up from anything, any kind of scale, clean it off on here with a rag. So we don't have any issues. Put a rag underneath this so you don't get no coolant on our ignition coil. Perfect. Out of the way. Now, as far as the thermostat, note orientation. The dome is on this side. That faces out. You got to make sure of that. It faces towards the radiator. It's an easy way to remember it. Again, cat claw. It goes down in here. Let's make sure you can see this. Cat claw goes down in here. Take it, hook it into there. Little tug, and it'll come out. It'll literally fall out like that. Now the other thing I check for on these housings, on the Zetecs and the Focus even, and of course the Escort, is there's a seam on the side here where it all comes together from the molding process. Those like to crack and split under multiple heat cycles, so you want to make sure there's no coolant leakage down in here at all before you go to change the thermostat. In all reality, you need a thermostat and housing. So let's check for that coolant leak beforehand. White traces of it, a low coolant level, anything like that. But besides that, we're just going to clean this up. Make sure it's nice and clean so that gasket can do its job, and we can fully seat on there. Now the thermostat O-ring actually goes around the thermostat on here. It's a pretty weird design. I've seen this on a couple of Fords. And the O-ring part number is that one right there. Okay, now the O-ring actually is not an O-ring. It goes around the thermostat on there. It's like a gasket on there. I'll show you how to do that. Let's get these out of here. And I'll list all these parts and tools and stuff like that I use to get these jobs done down below in the description there. Now this thing, it actually goes around it on the outside here, so you can see it right there. It's got like a slit in it right there, and it just simply goes into there all the way around. Make sure it fully seals. like so. And then make sure the dome faces out towards the radiator. There shouldn't be no real orientation for the bleeder check ball right here, but if it's horizontal like this and it's sticking out like this, since air goes up, I like to keep the bleeder over here. So with this being a captured O-ring on here gasket, it's kind of nice. It goes in here and it kind of stays while we get this down and into here. Now let's make sure you don't pinch any of this harness mesh in here. Get that out of the way. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to put the top screw in there once I find it. Now you're screwing in the plastic on here, and these actually cut the threads the first time they're put in. So you want to screw it back in. It's like a machined bolt, and follow those same threads if this is a used housing on here, and you'll be able to feel it going in. And besides that, we're going to snug this one up first so we can get the housing settled. Okay, you see how easy it's going in? Use my fingertips only. That's because we're following the same thread pattern. Now you see how it sucked it to it like that, like a little bit like that? You want to do that evenly, so at this point it's sucked in enough and aligned enough, we can start doing the two on this side. So we'll do the top one first, like that, okay? Put your shield back on there. Because the exhaust manifold's right there. You want to put that shield back on. And same thing. Get it in by hand. Okay. Down here. And everything on here is pretty easy to get to. Okay. Right side snug. Top right side. Let's go ahead and get this one snug. And I mean just barely touching snug, so it straightens it out. Like so. Okay. And then we're going to go down below here to the lower one, which you can't see. A little deep down in here. And we'll snug this one up also. And once you get all these snugged on here and they have a stop to them, where it'll actually just stop, and you'll know you're fully seated, just give them another 16th or an 8th turn. See right there, we just stopped, so I'll go a little more, and that's it. Now I'll put the torque specs down below in the video description so you know, but that's all there is to it. I mean, a little bit. Be very gentle with plastic housings like this. And we'll get to the bottom one here. I like to go over them one more time. Make sure they're snugged and torqued in case that gasket's settled on there. Perfect. Now at this point, just to make sure there's nothing in this area, either use a garden hose or I use brake clean. And we'll clean the outside of it and the harness down in there. Okay. And then we'll use compressed air Make sure all residue is out of here. So when we fill it and start, we're checking for leaks where you don't get no false positives. We definitely know there's a leak or not. You see how nice I cleaned it? Good old Chicago, always cops and fire engines and paramedics racing around. So we're going to go ahead and tighten this up here. You should be able to see that. The drain plug. We're going to start up by hand, and then we're simply going to snug it with our slip joint pliers. Right there. That's it. Okay, now I already flushed the coolant out of here. Just did a quick flush on there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fill it back up, and because it has the radiator with the neck style, like old style, instead of the degas bottle, the pressurized bottle, we're going to use something like this. What it allows is a reservoir of coolant up top, so it allows the system to burp and fill. Burp, fill, burp, fill. And it allows it to do it that way without constantly monitoring it. So because it has the curved neck on here, it does include a curved piece, so it goes back to level on there. Pretty cool. So this is the standard size. The way it works is you just take the adapter that fits down in there, we'll seal. That one looks about right. And then you screw it onto here like a radiator cap. Okay, there we go. Like so, till it stops, like a radiator cap. You put this right here. It just all pushes together, and then you put the reservoir just like that. It's pretty cool. Alright, got you a top-down view. We're going to refill it with some gold coolant. And this should be pre-mixed 50-50 before ever going into there. And I'll simply displace the air by weight, by the pressure of all the coolant on top of it, and it'll burp out. And while you're heating it up and opening the thermostat and fully flushing and purging the system of air while it's running, it'll also do the same. There's some bugs in there. Nah, it won't hurt. So once it stops doing this, what you do is you just fill it to maybe halfway, quarter way. You get to that line right there, and then you start the engine. So we'll go ahead and okay, so we have the thermostat in, the belt's on, everything's running just fine, no leaks. We're going to let it finish air purging. In the meantime, we're going to clear any pending 125 code since the last time I was here diagnosing it. So we're going to use the blue driver for that since it's a very basic code clearing, and we're going to watch the temperature also once it heats up and make sure it's fully heating up on there, and there's heat coming out of the heater core also. That's one of the biggest telltales. All the air is trapped that is trapped in the system is out, is if you have heat coming out of the heater core, out the vents, at idle. So let's go ahead and clear this. So I'm going to plug it in. And the cool thing about the blue driver is it'll actually launch the app on there automatically once it talks to it. It's all Bluetooth and starts IDing the vehicle. So blue driver does have its uses. So we'll read the codes Let it go through. No codes found. Okay, so there's no pending trouble codes and no, of course, other codes. We're going to clear it just in case. Let it go through it. Okay, it's heating up nicely. We have heat coming out of the vents at idle. Perfect. And over here, everything's back together. No leaks from the thermostat. Cap's back on. And our belt is tracking right. So overall, after a little bit of fighting and such, I say this is what it was, a successful repair on the road.